snow. Proper snow. Not the half-hearted sleet we've been getting, but the real thing. That's what the models are now showing for the end of January. And if you've been sitting through weeks of grey, damp, mild weather, wondering where winter went, this is the video you need to watch. Right now, conditions across the United Kingdom couldn't be more different depending on where you are. Scotland has already been seeing the sharp end of winter. Parts of the Highlands dropped to -8 this morning. Meanwhile, down in Cornwall and Devon, it's been mild and damp. Double figures in places. That contrast is about to change dramatically. Let me explain what is happening and why this matters. We've got low pressure sitting out to the west of the UK. High pressure is building to the east, up towards Scandinavia. This setup creates what meteorologists call a battleground scenario. The Atlantic wants to push mild, wet air in from the west, but that Scandinavian high is acting like a brick wall, stopping those weather systems from moving through quickly. The Met Office confirmed this morning that we're re-looking at further spells of rain and drizzle through today and into Tuesday. 2 bands of rain are moving through, one across Western Scotland and Northern Ireland, giving some heavier bursts. Another band stretching from northeast Scotland down through Northern England and into Wales. Low cloud, murky conditions, hill fog in places. Nothing unusual for January, but here's where it gets interesting. The models are now in increasing agreement about what happens from around the 24th of January onwards. And I've been examining the latest output from the GFS, the ECMWF, the UKMO, and the Canadian model. They were all pointing in the same direction. That Scandinavian high strengthens. The jet stream gets pushed southwards, tracking through Spain rather than across the UK. This forces the Atlantic low-pressure systems to slide on a northwest to southeast alignment. They get shunted down towards France and Iberia instead of barreling across Britain. When that happens, the wind direction changes. We go from a mild southwesterly flow to an easterly. And an easterly wind in late January means one thing: cold air from the continent. The GFS run from this morning was particularly striking. By the 25th, it shows the wind backing into a proper easterly direction, temperatures dropping sharply. The -10 line at 850 hectopascals, that is roughly 1,500 meters up, begins to push towards the UK. That S, the signature of genuine cold air. By the 27th, the GFS is showing widespread snow potential. And I'm not talking about marginal situations where it might be rain, might be sleet, might be snow, depending on your elevation. This is wrapped within properly cold air. All areas could see snow with this setup. Now, I need to be clear about confidence levels. At this range, 7 to 10 days out, the models can and do change. The operational runs are what we call deterministic forecasts, single solutions. What matters is whether the ensemble members, the multiple runs with slightly different starting conditions, are supporting this trend. And they are. The ensemble spread shows a clear signal for colder conditions arriving towards the end of January. The question isn't really whether it turns colder. The question is how cold and for how long. The Canadian model, the GEM, is showing a similar evolution. High pressure building to the north, low pressure sliding through France. Winds turning easterly by the 25th and 26th. It's not quite as aggressive as the GFS, but the pattern is consistent. The UKMO, our own Met Office model, has also shifted in this direction. A few days ago, it wasn't showing this. Now it favours low pressure sliding southwards through France with winds turning easterly, at least for Scotland initially, before that cold air filters south through the following days. So we have cross-model agreement on the synoptic setup. That builds confidence. Let's talk about what this means for different parts of the country. Scotland, you're going to feel this first and hardest. The Central Belt, the Highlands, Aberdeenshire. When an easterly flow establishes, you are directly exposed. Wintry showers will pack in from the North Sea, the kind that come in bands, intense for 20 minutes, then clearing, then another band. Accumulations on higher ground could be significant. Even at lower levels, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, you should be prepared for snow settling. Northern England, particularly the eastern side, Hull, Newcastle, the Yorkshire coast. You are also exposed to those North Sea showers. The Pennines will see snow. How far west it penetrates depends on the strength of the easterly. The Midlands have had a quiet winter so far. Grey skies, temperatures hovering around 6 or 7 degrees. Not much to write home about. That changes if this pattern verifies. You are far enough inland to avoid the worst of the coastal showers, but any organised precipitation moving through will fall as snow in properly cold air. Wales, you have been dealing with heavy rain this week, near record rainfall in places. By Wednesday, that Atlantic influence weakens. Through the following days, if the easterly establishes, you transition from rain to sleet to snow, particularly on higher ground. Snowdonia could see significant accumulations. The southwest, Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, you've had mild, damp conditions. Pleasant by January standards in Devon over the past fortnight, that mild air gets pushed out. You are partially sheltered from an easterly by the landmass to your east, but you are not immune. Temperatures will drop noticeably. The southeast and East Anglia. I know many of you have been waiting for proper winter weather. Several winters have passed without a decent snow covering in some areas. This pattern has potential for you. An easterly flow brings cold air directly off the continent. Any moisture interacting with that cold air produces snow. East Anglia is well positioned for this, London and the home counties. You don't see proper cold often. When an easterly establishes, you are not as exposed as the eastern coasts, but temperatures will still drop to well below freezing. Any precipitation has a good chance of falling as snow rather than rain. Now, some historical context. Many of you remember the beast from the east in February 2018. That was a sustained easterly flow that brought significant snow to large parts of the UK, including areas that rarely see it. Temperatures dropped to -14 in places, widespread disruption. Is this going to be Beast from the East Mark II? Probably not quite to that level. The Beast from the East was an exceptional event, but the pattern developing here is similar in nature. Scandinavian blocking forcing an easterly wind, cold continental air being drawn westwards. The winter of 1987 had a similar setup in January. Those of you in Scotland particularly will remember. Snow on the ground for weeks. The pattern we're re-seeing has echoes of that. What should you be doing to prepare? First, the practical basics. If you're in an area likely to see snow, make sure you have supplies, bread, milk, medications, pet food. Not because this is an emergency, but because you don't want to be making unnecessary journeys in poor conditions. If you have vulnerable neighbors, particularly elderly people living alone, check on them. Make sure they know what's coming and have what they need. For those of you who drive, think about whether your journeys are essential. If you are in Scotland or the eastern coastal areas, conditions could deteriorate rapidly. Keep your fuel tank at least half full. Carry a blanket, a torch, some water, and a phone charger. Basic preparedness. If you are in the southeast and you don't normally deal with snow, a bit of extra caution is warranted. Your local councils don't grit as extensively as they do up north because they don't usually need to. That means side roads and residential areas can become treacherous quickly. Salt your paths and driveways before the snow arrives, not after. Once it's down and compacted, salt is less effective. If you haven't got salt, even cat litter or sand provides some traction. For those of you receiving cold weather payments, if temperatures remain at or below freezing for 7 consecutive days in your area, you should receive the £25 payment automatically. Keep an eye on this if you're re-eligible. Now, what about timing? Through the next few days, we continue with the current pattern. Mild, damp, cloudy. Rain at times, particularly in the west and north. Tuesday sees the remnants of the weekend weather systems moving away into the North Sea. Most places become dry and bright, but another area of low pressure brings rain and stronger winds to parts of Northern Ireland, Western Wales and Cornwall by the afternoon. Gales around the coast. Wednesday and Thursday, more of the same. Unsettled. The Atlantic still has influence. The transition begins around Friday into the weekend. The high pressure builds to the north. The jet stream shifts south. The wind direction starts to back from southwesterly towards southerly, then southeasterly, then easterly. By Sunday or Monday of the following week, if the models are correct, we are in a proper easterly regime. That when conditions turn genuinely cold and wintry. The cold spell could last several days, possibly through to the 29th or even into early February. The GFS and Canadian models both suggest the blocking pattern is robust. Once established, it doesn't break down quickly. I'll be watching the model runs closely over the next few days. If there is a significant shift, I'll update you. But as things stand, the signal for a cold, potentially snowy spell from around the 24th to 25th of January is looking increasingly credible. This isn't guaranteed. Weather forecasting beyond 5 days always carries uncertainty. But the trend is clear, the models are converging, and the synoptic setup makes meteorological sense. For those of you who enjoy winter weather, this could be what you've been waiting for. For those who don't, forewarned is forearmed. Prepare sensibly, don't panic, and keep an eye on the updated forecasts as we get closer. That is all for now. I'll have another update for you as the situation develops. Stay safe, stay warm, and I'll see you